Hey guys, it's Molly and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about my top 23 books of 2023. I've seen people do this and I decided that I was going to. So I made a Notion page on my computer on Notion and we're just going to go through the 23. We're going to go from 23 to 1. These are in a specific order, but also not, take it kind of with a grain of salt. But we're just gonna go through, so let's get it. Okay, first at number 23 we have One Italian Summer by Rebecca Searle. I read this summer, I think in July. This book was so good and so heartwarming, but also so sad. This is about Katie and her mom Carol. They've always had a really good relationship, been literally best friends, and Carol ends up dying of cancer, I believe. And literally a month before her and Katie were supposed to go on a trip to Positano, Italy. Positano, that's how you say it, right? Why do I feel like I'm saying it wrong? Whatever. Anyways, literally a month before they were supposed to go to Italy, and Katie is like, okay, I don't think I'm gonna go, but Katie's husband and her dad are both like, you should go. And so she goes, and the reason that her and her mom were gonna go to Positano in the first place was because when Carol was younger, she went for a year, and Katie ends up going, and it's literally, this book is so good. Also takes place in Italy in the summer, so good. And it's just a story about friendship, family, and love, and it's just, it's so good. So good. Next, number 22, we have Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I always say her name wrong. Taylor Jenkins Reid. And this is about, so her books are kind of all interconnected. Oh, I have a flight ticket in here. What's my ticket to Australia? I didn't know this was in here. That's really funny. But basically this is about Nina Riva and her family, and they are kind of this famous family in, I think, the 80s in Southern California. This is kind of about their family, and also they have this really big house party every year, and so this kind of takes place during that, talks about their family and all their troubles, and it's so good. So good. Honestly, any Taylor Jenkins Reid book you should read because her writing is so good. Her ability to storytell is just takes my breath away. Next, we have Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. This is the first book in the Knock 'Em Out series, and this is so funny to me because the other two books in this series I literally DNF'd. And the only other Lucy Score book I read other than this one, I gave I think 2 stars. I just didn't like. But this one for some reason has been one of my favorite books I read this year. I read this in April and I just had the best time reading it. As you can see, I annotated it. I tabbed a bunch. It was just so good. This is a small town kind of romance. Takes place in a small town in Virginia, I think, and it's called Knock 'Em Out. It's about Naomi and Knox, and Naomi is a runaway bride. Interesting trope. This is the first time I think I've read this trope, and I loved it so much. But she basically, runaway bride, she goes to Knock 'Em Out because her twin sister Tina, who's kind of an evil twin sister, she calls her and she's like, I'm in trouble. And so Naomi's like, okay, and she comes to help her. Tina ends up tricking her, steals Naomi's car and a bunch of her stuff, and then basically leaves her daughter with Naomi. And so Naomi is stuck in Knock 'Em Out, taking care of her niece, and then also just kind of what the fuck am I gonna do with my life, because she literally ran away from her husband. And then Knox is also there, and Knox is kind of very wary of her, and he's just kind of she's not the kind of woman I'd normally be with. And honestly, I think if I read this book again right now, I would have hated it, but I when I first read it, I just loved it. I was giggling, I was kicking my feet. I understand because a lot of people don't like this book, and I completely understand. But for some reason, I ate it up. I loved it. I don't know why. Does not add up with me as a person. One of my friends were like, I'm so surprised that you liked that book. And I was like, honestly, me too. Like, honestly, me too. But I loved it. It was so good. Okay, next, number 20. This is a Kindle book. I read Damage Like Us. This is the first book in the Like Us series, which is the spin-off of the Addicted Calorie Sisters series. So the Like Us series is the kids of like the characters in the Addicted Like Us. And the first 3 books of the Like Us series follows Mafi, who is the oldest son of Lily and Lo. And y'all, I loved Mafi Hale so much. I can't remember who his love interest was, but it was Mantine's man. It was so good, and Mafi is just like, I honestly kind of forgot about this book, but when I was thinking about like my tops of the year, I remember reading this and just being completely obsessed with them and completely obsessed with this book. I don't think I'm going to continue the Like Us series just because after the 3rd one of their book, it just kind of goes downhill. I honestly might skip and just read their next, because they have another book. I might just skip and just read that one. Honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, I think that's actually what I'm gonna do. But it's so good, and I don't think they're on Kindle Unlimited. I bought them on Kindle, but the Addicted series is now on Kindle Unlimited, or at least the first book is. I don't know if the rest are, but the first one is on Kindle Unlimited. So if you have Kindle Unlimited, you should read the Addicted series, because that's one of my favorite series I read this year. Next, number 19, we have a pretty recent read. I read this like November, I think, so kind of like a month ago. This is The Bromance Book Club by Lyssa Kay Adams. This was kind of just like out of nowhere for me. I saw Destiny Sidwell talking about this, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna try it. I picked it up at Barnes & Noble, and I think I literally read it in like a day. It was so good. This is about Gavin Scott, and he is a baseball player in Nashville, and his marriage with his wife is just going downhill in the dumps. And so a bunch of his friends, and after his wife asked for divorce, a bunch of his friends is like, okay, we're gonna help you out, and he gets invited to the Bromance Book Club, which is basically a bunch of guys in Nashville who meet up like once a week, once a month, and they read romance books to help with their troubles in their romantic lives. And it's so, so, so good. I've never read a second chance marriage trope, and this one was so good. It was so sweet, and they have twin daughters, and the twin daughters were just like so, so cute, and I just loved it. And it was kind of small town, even though it takes place in Nashville, but so good. Okay. Next we have The Do-Over by Lynn Painter. This is like the special edition that I got at Barnes & Noble, but this is so good. I love Lynn Painter's books, specifically her YA books. This one is about Emily and Nick, and basically Emily has the worst Valentine's Day in the world, like the worst. And she ends the day going to her grandmother's house, and she wakes up the next morning and it is Valentine's Day morning again, and she is basically stuck in like a Groundhog Day situation, reliving this day over and over again. It's so good. The banter was amazing. The Taylor Swift references, Lynn Painter has so many Taylor Swift references in her books, but this one specifically, there's so many Taylor Swift references, and it was so good, and I loved it so much. So you should go read it, specifically just like any Lynn Painter YA. She just came out with one called Betting on You that I actually read. So, so good. Okay, next, I think this is what number are we on? Number 17. Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Another Taylor Jenkins Reid book. This one is about Carrie Soto. And she basically was a tennis player in, I think, the 70s. And she was just like this crazy, amazing tennis player. She was so good. And she kind of ends up having a mental breakdown a little bit. And she decides to take a break from tennis, and she walks away when she's kind of like at the height of her career. Well, her career kind of goes downhill, and she's like walks away. And then like I think 5 years later, 10 years later, 6 years later, After her retirement, a girl younger than her is gonna beat her record. Like, she has a tennis record and that girl is coming to beat it. And she's like, nuh-uh. And so at 36 years old, which is kind of like unheard of in the tennis world, apparently, I don't really know much about tennis, but I was eating this book up. That's the thing with Taylor Jenkins Reid. She can make me care about literally anything. Like, I do not give a shit about tennis, but she made me just like absolutely adore this. Like, I loved it so much. And it makes you feel like you're reading real characters too, which is like the big thing that I love about her writing, is that it literally just feels like you're reading like someone's memoir. Like, it doesn't feel like you're reading fiction. Like, it literally is just like, oh, like she's a real person, but she's not. So good. Okay, number 16, we have Five Survive by Holly Jackson. If you don't know who Holly Jackson is, she wrote the Good Girls Guide to Murder trilogy, which I read last year and was so good. And this is one of her standalones. It's actually her only standalone, because I didn't know Good Girls Guide to Murder was her debut novel, but this is like her only standalone, and it is a YA thriller, and it's so good. It follows 6 high school students on spring break, and they take an RV from Pittsburgh to Florida, or Alabama, I think it's Florida, to Florida for spring break. And in the middle of their road trip, they end up getting stuck. And there's like a shooter outside, and he's kind of like demanding that one of them has a secret and they need to tell him, or all 6 of them are gonna die. So only 5 can survive. And it's so good. It all takes place in like one night too, and you're just like on the edge of your seat. So good. Okay. Next is number 16, and this is Wildfire by Hannah Grace. I read Icebreaker last year, and then I also reread it this year, but I didn't put any rereads in this, like, the top 23. But I love her writing. Hannah Grace is such a good romance writer. One of the things I love about her writing is she just completely demolishes the miscommunication trope, which is like my least favorite thing ever. She promotes good communication in relationships, and her characters are just like absolutely adorable. And look at this cover. This cover is so freaking cute. But this is the second book in the Maple Hills series, and this follows Russ and Aurora. Also love their names. Their names are so cute. Russ and Aurora, and basically they have a one-night stand. And they're like, okay, like, we're not gonna talk to each other, we're never gonna see each other again. 2 days later, they see each other. Sorry, I'm like giggling because I love this book so much. They see each other at team building for their summer camp counselor job, and they're like stuck together, and it's so good. And Russ is the blueprint. I love Russ, and I can't wait. Henry's book is the 3rd book in the series, and it comes out next year, and I'm so excited. If you know, you know. Okay. Next we have another Kindle book. This is number 14, Out on a Limb. I can't remember who it's by. I don't know, but this book was so good. I read this in October, and it is an accidental pregnancy trope, if you don't like it. But honestly, like, it's not like one of those weird ones. I don't know how to explain, but it's good. They're good. I love them. I can't remember their names. Winnie. One of them is named Winnie. The girl's name is Winnie. I can't remember the guy's name. I don't know. I think it was like Xavier or something. What's his name? I don't know. Anyways, it's about 2. They have a one-night stand on Halloween. And then I love too the way that they're just kind of like, okay, we're raising this baby together. And he moves her into his house and like takes care of her. And it's just, it's too much. It's too much. It was so good. So good. Next we have number, oh shoot, I think I messed up. I did 15 twice. Okay, I kind of screwed up. Okay, this is number 13. Oh wait, never mind. I didn't screw up. I just said it wrong. Yeah, I did screw up. Wait, crap. How did I do that? I think I added too many books. Okay, whatever. This is number 13. I think. Right? Okay. Whatever. I'm sorry. I like messed up the list and now I'm really confused. Number 13, Stolen Heir by Sophie Lark. I started the Brutal Birthright series this year by Sophie Lark, and these are dark romance mafia books, but they're like, I was talking about this the other day, I think in like my wrap up or something. They're like low tier dark romance. I feel like I'm not a dark romance reader. I'm a fluffy, happy romance girly, as you can see from the books I've talked about so far. I am not a dark romance girly, but there's something about this series that I just like eat up. And this one, for some reason, like this is literally a kidnapping trope. This is literally a kidnapping trope book. And I was like giggling, kicking my feet. I was like loving it. Also, I used to be a ballerina when I was younger. I like did dance all throughout my life until I graduated high school. And I've never really read any books of like a dancer as the main character and she's a ballerina. And I was like, hold the phone. It was so fun to read about because she was like talking about like a bunch of things that used to be literally like the center of my universe. And it was so good. And yeah, you should read that series. Okay, remember when I said that I fucked this up? I literally fucked this up. I can't, like, I think we're on number 12 now. Okay, so number 12 is Kindle Divine Rivals by Becca Ross. I'm like giggling when I'm talking about these books, but if you know, you know. I feel like so many people have talked about this book this year. It really became like so popular. Divine Rivals is a fantasy, very romantic kind of fantasy though. Cannot remember what the main characters' names are. Frick. I'm like not good at remembering things. But basically there's two main characters and it's like the world that they live in, it's kind of like older times, magic, and there's like a war going on, and it's like gods and goddesses, and it's a lot of things happening. But these two characters, they are like rivals. That's how like that's why the title is called Divine Rivals, because they're rivals. And they work at the same, sorry, I'm like doing something tonight and I forgot what time it was for a minute. They work at the same like newspaper publishing, whatever. And the girl, her mom ends up dying, and she, like, her brother's on the front lines of the war. So she's like, you know what, I'm gonna go on the front lines and be a news reporter. So she takes her magic typewriter and she goes on the front lines, and at the same time that she's doing this, she's like communicating with a guy who she doesn't really know who it is. Spoiler alert, it's the guy who's her rival. It's so good and I really enjoyed it, and it was really good. And the next book comes out like the day after Christmas, I think. Next, I read the entire Harry Potter series this year, and that was the first time I've ever, oh my god, the first time I ever read the books, like, ever. And I loved all of the books, but I think the one that I had the best experience reading was Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, which is the last one. But that, for some reason, oh my god, that one for some reason was my favorite. I don't know, maybe it was like just the ending, just like, it was so good and I really liked it. And I really liked the whole Harry Potter series, and I honestly recommend, if you didn't read it when you were younger, or if you did, like, rereading it now. It's just, I feel like it just hits different. Like, books that you read when you were little just hit so different when you read them older. And like, the books are like YA, obviously, because they're targeted towards kids, but the writing is, I'll give it to Miss JK, the writing is so good, and it's not like cringy, which I feel like a lot of like YA books, like, I read Red Queen this month and it was, I'm just saying, I was not a fan. The writing was just like a little too much for me. But Harry Potter, the writing is so good. The magical realism, or not magical realism, The magicalism of it is so good, and it's just so fun. Okay. Again, remember when I said I fucked up? I can't remember what one we're on. I think we're on 10. I don't know why it fucked up like that. Okay. Okay, now we're on 10. And that is, you guessed it, Fourth Wing. This book took everyone by storm this year, and it didn't leave me out. It didn't leave me out. I was in it too. I was obsessed with this book. This was so good. If you don't know what Fourth Wing is, also this is the sprayed edges one. This is like the special edition. If you don't know what Fourth Wing is, you're probably living under a rock, but it is a fantasy book about dragons, and it's an enemies to lovers, dragons, romantasy, and it's so freaking good. Okay, I have to pull the rest of the books out, so give me a second. I don't know where that is. He's gonna yell. He's gonna bark. He's gonna bark. He's gonna bark. Sorry, that's my dog. He's a yapper. These books are gonna fall. Okay. They didn't fall. Oh, I did Happy Place twice? Oh. Okay. I don't think I put this up in your slip on here, so I'm gonna put it in here. Okay, let's get into it. So, I can't remember what number we're on. Okay, we're on number 9 now. Where is it? Here it is. So number 9 is A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J Maas. I started the ACOTAR series this year, and I kind of like got back into reading it. I actually read this book in November. So good. This is probably my favorite in the series. I just love it. It's so good. If you don't know what the ACOTAR series is about, it's a fantasy, kind of like Beauty and the Beast retelling, but it's about courts and fairies, and it's really good. And it's a good beginner fantasy if you're not like super into fantasy. That's a good place to start, is ACOTAR. And Sarah J Maas is like the queen of fantasy. Like, she's the queen. Everyone talks about her. Okay, next we have, this book was so good. This is also an author that I found this year, Molly. This is Sarah Adams, and she is a little romance writer, a little cutie little romance writer, and she wrote Practice Makes Perfect, and this is the second book in When in Rome, and this is a grumpy sunshine, good girl, bad boy kind of thing. Also fake dating, sort of, kind of like teaching how to date kind of thing. But this is about Annie and, who's the guy? Will. And Annie is the sister of the guy in the main book, and Will is like the bodyguard of the girl in the main book because she's a pop star. So cute, so sweet, love it. It's also small town. I was in my small town era this year. Love small town. Okay, next we have Happy Place. I read this over the summer. This also got me back in like my Emily Henry mood, because I read Book Lovers this year and People We Meet on Vacation, and both those books I DNF'd and just hated. But Happy Place, I love Happy Place so much. This is a second chance romance. Also just friend group, so fun. This friend group, basically like they met in college, and every year since they kind of were friends, they spend a week in, I think, Maine at this lake house that one of the girls in the group It's like her family's house, and they spend a week there, and they're just all together. And this book is the last time they'll be together because the dad is like selling the house, and a lot of things come up, and it's so good. It's so good. When and Harriet Forever. Okay. Next, number 6. I think y'all knew I was going to talk about this. Magnolia Parks. This book, I feel like, went off this year. I've known about this book for a while. I feel like since Steph Bower started talking about it in like 2021, I think, or 2022. When did she start talking about it? I think she started talking about it like 2022. This book really like went off this year, honestly. Like Jessa, everyone started just like falling in love with her. I read this on Kindle Unlimited originally when I was living in Ireland, and then I got like the physical copy, I like annotated it, and then I got like the British UK like big version. I loved this series. I loved Magnolia Parks. Literally, how to describe it, Gossip Girl but British. And Magnolia and BJ are literally Blair and Chuck. That's all I'm saying. Okay, next. Oh, I didn't even see it or grab it. Okay, next book is Binding 13. Where is it? Find me. The fact that I literally can't see like behind myself. Okay, Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh. I loved this book so much. I read this in April. I'm already planning on doing a reread next year, so don't even say anything about it. I'm so excited. And Taming 7 comes out in April, and it's Gabby's book, and I'm so excited. I feel like I talk about it kind of a lot, but I studied abroad in Ireland, and that was honestly like one of the most amazing things I've ever done ever, because I loved Ireland so much. I loved Dublin, and the people that I lived with was like, they're always gonna have a place in my heart because of that. And this takes place in Ireland, takes place in where they live. I can't remember, but like I recognized it when they talked about it. I think it was like Caldway or something. But this is about Shannon and Johnny, and Shannon has had a very hard home life, and she's been bullied her whole life, so she ends up going from the public school she's gone her whole life to one of the private schools called Talman College, but it's high school because they call high school college, and then they call like actual university. And Johnny, who is the star rugby player, and they get together. It's so good. Do check the trigger warnings though. There's a lot of trigger warnings. But it's also just harmless, like teenage fun. And it's just so good. It's so good. Next, number 3. We're getting to the end, guys. We are getting to the end. Oh wait. I feel like I can, okay, that was number 4, but I forgot to do number 5. Number 5 is 7 Year Slip by Ashley Poston. I read this also earlier this year, and I don't even know what to say about this book. Like, I literally don't even know what to say about this book. This is so good. This is magical realism, takes place in New York in the fall, and it's about Clementine, which love the name, by the way, and another guy, I can't remember his name. And basically Clementine's aunt leaves her this apartment. It's a magical apartment, and sometimes it slips 7 years in the past, and she meets this guy who's 7 years in the past, and they end up kind of like getting feelings for each other, but she's like, no, I can't, because he like doesn't know who I really am. And it's just so good. It's so good. It makes me want to move to New York like so bad. Okay, so next, I'm sorry, we have to talk about it. Daisy Hates. This is the second book in like the Magnolia Parks universe. Like, Magnolia Parks goes Magnolia Parks, why can't I speak? Magnolia Parks, Daisy Hates, Magnolia Parks The Great Undoing, no, Magnolia Parks The Long Way Home, Daisy Hates The Great Undoing, and then the next one is gonna be Magnolia Parks Into the Dark, and then there's like more Daisy Hates books. But this is this like first Daisy Hates book, and y'all, Daisy, I'm such a bigger fan of Daisy than I am of Magnolia. I don't know like what it is. Magnolia is like was explaining this to somebody the other day. Magnolia is like that like annoying little friend that like you're friends with, but she's like kind of toxic. She's kind of annoying, and sometimes you kind of have to like put her text on do not disturb. Daisy is like your best friend. Like you could like sit in a room in silence with her and you just like feel comfortable. At least for me, like Daisy, I love. I love. Plus Julian and Christian. I rest my case. Next, number 2, we have Hot House Flower, which this is the second book in the Calloway Sister series, and this follows Daisy, who's the youngest Calloway, and then Rake. This is age difference, which I feel like a lot of people have issues with that, but I don't know. I usually have like issues with age difference, but like not with this one. These are my babies, and I also will be rereading it next year. And then number 1, my top favorite book I read this year. If you're a friend of me in real life, or like you knew me between the months of January and like March when I would not shut the fuck up about this book in this series, the Mindfuck series. I don't want to reread it because it's like the whole reason I think I liked it so much the first time was because I didn't really know what was going on, and I was just like, what is gonna happen, what is going on, what's happening. Also, it was so mentally triggering. Like, please check your trigger warnings for this book because it is kind of like gruesome, but it's mainly just emotional. Like, it was so emotional. This book was so good. I was just like constantly like, what the fuck is going on? But it's about this girl who has a very, very traumatic upbringing. She goes through a very traumatic thing, and she decides she wants revenge, which honestly, granted, like completely okay. And so she gives herself a new identity and she starts planning, and she ends up becoming the serial killer. And 10 years later, I'm like giggling, I'm sorry. 10 years later, she meets this guy who's an FBI agent. End up hooking up, they end up like dating. Guess what the FBI agent, what his like case is? Her. He is following her. Like, she is like a serial killer, right? He's an FBI agent. He is the one on her case. He is literally like constantly, and it was so funny to me because they kept being like, okay, well, it's like a sexually deviant gay man in like his 30s. Meanwhile, his like 5'2", 5'2" little girlfriend is like, actually, it's me. Actually, it's me. Shut up. And it's definitely like, what the heck is that sound? Is that this? Do y'all hear that? The pop socket. That's scaring me. Anyways, that's all my books of this year. I hope you guys enjoyed. I love you, and I'll see you later. Bye.